Bourbon is supposed to be America's purest spirit. Federal law prohibits any coloring, flavoring, or blending materials from being added to any product labeled bourbon whiskey. No caramel, no sugar, no glycerin, no exceptions. But here is what federal regulators do not protect you from: cheap corn, accelerated fermentation, minimal barrel contact, and production shortcuts that leave elevated levels of toxic byproducts in your glass. Some of these bottles use deceptive labeling to disguise blended whiskey as bourbon. Others are nothing more than sourced industrial distillate, repackaged with a fictional heritage story and a premium price tag. Today we expose 9 bourbons you need to stop buying based on what is actually happening at the molecular and production level, then reveal 4 bottles where the chemistry and the craft are verifiably real. Stay until the end, because number 1 reveals a pricing deception that has fooled millions of American bourbon buyers. Number 9, the blended whiskey trap. This is not about one bottle. This is about an entire category of products sitting next to real bourbon on the shelf, using similar label designs and Kentucky imagery, while legally containing up to 80% industrial grain alcohol. Products like Kentucky Deluxe are classified as blended whiskey. Under federal alcohol regulations, a product labeled blended whiskey is only required to contain a minimum of 20% straight whiskey on a proof gallon basis. The remaining 80% can be neutral grain spirits, which is essentially industrial ethanol distilled to near purity with 0 barrel aging and 0 flavor contribution. Kentucky Deluxe itself confirms this. The fine print on its label states the contents are just 20% Kentucky straight whiskey and 80% grain neutral spirits. 4/5 of what you are drinking never touch the inside of an oak barrel. And blended whiskies are legally permitted to contain up to 2.5% undisclosed additives, including sugar and caramel coloring. In a 750 milliliter bottle, that is nearly 19 milliliters of hidden flavor modifiers the consumer will never know about. Your defense is simple: turn the bottle around. If you see blended whiskey anywhere on the label, put it back. Number 8. Hayes Parker. This bottle survives entirely on one strategy: shelf placement next to real bourbon at a price that catches budget shoppers off guard. But the absence of one word on the label reveals everything you need to know. Hayes Parker does not carry the designation straight. That is a federally regulated guarantee that the whiskey has been aged for a minimum of 2 years in new charred oak barrels, with 0 additives of any kind. Without it, there is no minimum aging requirement. The bourbon inside could have spent weeks in a barrel rather than years. Barrel aging is essential, not decorative. When bourbon enters charred oak, heat-fractured wood releases vanillin from broken-down lignin compounds. The char layer caramelizes hemicellulose into wood sugars. Over time, the spirit extracts tannins, lactones, and phenolic compounds that create the caramel, vanilla, and oak flavors that define quality bourbon. Cut that contact short, and none of those reactions complete. Reviewers consistently describe Hayes Parker as one-dimensional, artificially sweet, with no recognizable finish. You are tasting a spirit that was pulled from wood before the chemistry had a chance to do its job. Number 7. Fighting Cock. At 103 proof and roughly $20 a bottle, Fighting Cock appears to be one of the best value propositions in bourbon. High proof usually means bolder flavor. In this case, it means something else entirely. The issue is congener concentration. During fermentation, yeast generates secondary compounds, including acetaldehyde and fusel alcohols such as isoamyl alcohol and isobutanol. In carefully crafted bourbon, the distiller makes precise cuts during distillation to separate those compounds from the desirable ethanol in the middle of the run, known as the hearts. Budget distillation widens those cuts. More heads and tails bleed into the final product to maximize yield. Combined with high proof, you concentrate these congener compounds directly into the bottle. That severe headache the next morning is not just dehydration. It is your liver processing elevated levels of acetaldehyde and fusel alcohols that a more careful distillation would have removed. Number 6. Benchmark Old Number 8. Buffalo Trace's bottom shelf bourbon uses the same mash bill as Eagle Rare and George T. Stagg. Same corn, same rye, same malted barley, same stills. So why does it taste nothing like its siblings? Barrel selection and aging duration. Premium Buffalo Trace expressions spend from 8 to 15 years in carefully selected barrels at optimal warehouse positions. Temperature fluctuations drive the bourbon in and out of the wood grain, pulling deeper layers of vanillin, syringaldehyde, and oak lactones with each seasonal cycle. Benchmark gets the youngest barrels from the least favorable spots. The label confirms it with a mandatory age statement of at least 36 months required because federal law demands disclosure for any straight bourbon under 4 years. The liquid is then proofed down to 80 proof, the federal minimum. Lower proof means more water added after aging, which means more bottles from fewer barrels and thinner flavor. Same distillery, same ingredients, radically different chemistry in the glass. Number 5, Hudson Baby Bourbon, $50 for a New York craft bourbon aged in small format barrels. These smaller barrels, sometimes as small as 5 or 10 gallons compared to the industry standard 53-gallon barrel, increase the surface area to volume ratio and accelerate wood extraction. Accelerated extraction pulls tannins and wood sugars rapidly, without replicating the slow oxidation and esterification reactions that occur over years in a full-size barrel. Those gradual transformations create complexity, layered fruit esters, a rounded mouthfeel, and a long finish. Small barrels give you the color and initial sweetness of a mature bourbon, but the molecular depth is simply not there. At $50, you are competing with bourbons aged 10 years in full-size cooperage. The packaging is doing the work the chemistry cannot. Number 4, Basil Hayden's, bottled at exactly 80 proof, the absolute federal minimum. Flavor compounds in bourbon are carried by ethanol. Higher proof delivers those compounds more efficiently to your palate. Volatile aromatic esters, barrel phenols, and vanillin all bind more effectively at higher alcohol concentrations. At 80 proof, these compounds are diluted and muted. Multiple experts have described the result as thin and lacking depth for its $45 price point. The marketing positions the low proof as a feature, calling it approachable and smooth. Smooth is not a tasting note. It is the absence of the barrel-derived compounds that would be present at a higher bottling strength. You are paying premium pricing for a deliberately diluted product. Number 3, Jefferson's Ocean Aged at Sea. Jefferson's is not a distiller. They do not distill a single drop of their own bourbon. The company purchases finished barrels from undisclosed source distilleries, then ages them on a ship traveling through the tropics. The constant rocking and temperature fluctuations are supposed to accelerate wood interaction. Professional tasters have consistently described the result as overwhelmingly bitter, with excessive leather and tobacco compounds. The likely cause is over-extraction. Aggressive agitation pulled excessive tannins from the barrel wood without the slow esterification reactions needed to balance them. The ocean may have accelerated the wrong part of the aging process. At $60 to $80, you are paying for the narrative of a boat trip, not for verified molecular superiority. If you are finding this useful, hit subscribe. We break down what is actually happening inside your bottle every week. Number 2, Garrison Brothers. Garrison Brothers was the first legal whiskey distillery in Texas. Standard bottles cost around $80. Cowboy bourbon regularly exceeds $200. Texas warehouses routinely surpass 100 degrees Fahrenheit in summer, driving bourbon into the wood aggressively and pulling enormous amounts of tannin, char compounds, and oak lactones in a compressed time frame. In Kentucky, a 10-year bourbon gently extracts these compounds through slow seasonal cycles. In Texas, the equivalent extraction can happen in 3 to 4 years. Faster does not mean better. Rapid extraction pulls heavy polyphenolic tannins into the spirit before slower oxidation reactions can convert harsh wood chemicals into smooth, rounded flavor. The result, confirmed across bourbon communities and independent reviewers, is a whiskey that tastes hot, aggressively tannic, and young despite its premium positioning. At $80 to $200, you are paying a luxury price for Thermodynamics working against the spirit. Number 1. Weller Special Reserve. This is not a bad bourbon. It is the most dangerous pricing illusion in the American whiskey market. and it reveals a deception that has nothing to do with what is in the bottle and everything to do with what consumers have been psychologically manipulated to believe. Weller Special Reserve is produced by Buffalo Trace using a wheated mash bill, which means it substitutes wheat for rye as the secondary grain. This exact grain profile is shared by the most mythologized bourbon in existence, Pappy Van Winkle. Same distillery, same recipe, same facility. When the internet discovered this connection, it triggered a psychological phenomenon called the halo effect. Consumers began projecting the perceived quality and extreme scarcity value of Pappy Van Winkle onto every wheated bourbon that Buffalo Trace produces. Weller, originally designed and priced as a $25 daily drinker, became the target of hoarding, flipping, and secondary market inflation. At its intended retail price, it is a perfectly acceptable light-bodied wheated bourbon. At inflated prices of $60 to $80 on secondary markets, blind tasting panels consistently rate it as mid-shelf. You are not purchasing superior chemistry. You are purchasing a psychological association with a bottle you will almost certainly never find. The Pappy connection is the product. The liquid is secondary. Now, 4 bourbons where the chemistry is verifiably real. Safe. Pick 1. Evan Williams Bottled in Bond, the Bottled in Bond. Act of 1897 is the oldest consumer protection law in American spirits, predating the Pure Food and Drug Act. It guarantees 4 things: 1 distilling season, 1 distiller at 1 distillery, a minimum of 4 years aging, and exactly 100 proof. Evan Williams Bottled in Bond comes from Heaven Hill, using a mash bill of 78% corn, 10% rye, and 12% malted barley. 4 years in full-size 53-gallon charred white oak allows complete extraction of vanillin, caramel compounds from caramelized hemicellulose, and oak lactones. At 100 proof, the ethanol carries those flavors effectively without overwhelming them. It costs $15 to $20. The Bottled in Bond stamp is the distiller signing their name to the work. You know who made it, where, when, and for exactly how long. Safe pick 2. Wild Turkey 101. Same mash bill since the 1940s. 75% corn, 13% rye, 12% malted barley. The distillery enters the bourbon into the barrel at around 115 proof, lower than most competitors who use the industry maximum of 125. That lower entry proof is a deliberate chemical decision. When bourbon enters the barrel at a lower alcohol concentration, the ethanol extracts more vanillin and wood sugars from the charred layer, while pulling fewer bitter tannin compounds from deeper in the stave. Bottled at 101 proof after 6 to 8 years of aging, virtually none of that barrel character is diluted away. You receive the bourbon almost exactly as it came out of the wood. $25 to $30 for bourbon engineered at the molecular level to maximize flavor extraction. There is a reason this has been a bartender and distiller favorite for decades. Safe pick 3. Elijah Craig, small batch. Same Heaven Hill 78, 10, 12 mash bill as Evan Williams, but with barrels selected from 8 to 12 years of age. That range is Kentucky's sweet spot for barrel chemistry. Long enough for full vanillin extraction and tannin polymerization, where small, harsh tannins bond into larger, softer molecules, and significant ester formation adds fruit and floral complexity. Not so long that over-extraction introduces bitter, drying compounds, $30 to $35. Competing products with similar age statements regularly cost double or triple. Safe pick 4. 4 Roses single barrel, 2 mash bills, 5 proprietary yeast strains, and 10 unique bourbon recipes. Each yeast strain determines which ester compounds are generated during fermentation. Their single barrel uses the OBSV recipe, producing light fruit esters and prominent vanillin compounds that complement the high rye secondary grain. Each barrel is individually selected by the master distiller, meaning every bottle's chemical profile was verified by a human palate, not blended away into a multi-thousand barrel vatting. At $40, this is the most transparent, scientifically documented single-barrel bourbon at its price point. You know the exact recipe, the exact yeast strain, and the exact methodology. Nothing is hidden. So here is the bottom line. Federal law prohibits additives in bourbon, which means the deceptions in this market are more subtle. They hide in proof manipulation, accelerated aging, barrel shortcuts, sourced distillate, blended whiskey dressed up as bourbon, and psychological pricing games. Check your shelf. Are you drinking verified craft or funding a marketing story? Drop the brand in the comments. If you refuse to overpay for production shortcuts disguised as premium whiskey, hit subscribe and we'll see you in the next investigation.